In October 2023, Nissan's own CFO stood in front of investors and said, and I'm quoting directly, "We are in a race against time." Not a journalist, not a short seller, not some YouTube channel trying to get clicks. Their own CFO, and yet nobody talked about it. The business media moved on. Car reviewers kept posting test drives. Dealers kept running promotions. And Nissan kept releasing press releases that sounded just confident enough to make you think everything was fine. But here's what was actually happening behind the scenes. Nissan was burning through cash at a rate that should have triggered alarm bells across the entire industry. Their alliance with Renault, the partnership that literally kept them alive in 2000, was quietly fracturing. Their EV strategy was 3 years behind every major competitor. And their China sales, which once accounted for nearly 30% of their global volume, had collapsed so fast that no pivot could realistically save them in time. So today, we're going to do what the media hasn't done. We're going to follow the money, read the filings, and tell you exactly what Nissan's own executives know, but aren't saying out loud. Because when a company this size starts dying, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, and then suddenly all at once. Let's go. To understand where Nissan is now, you have to go back to the man who saved them and then destroyed them. In 1999, Nissan was technically bankrupt. They had $19 billion in debt, no product roadmap, and a workforce that had completely lost direction. Renault stepped in with $5.4 billion, sent a 45-year-old Brazilian-Lebanese executive named Carlos going to Tokyo and told him to fix it. He did. In 2 years, Nissan went from near collapse to $2.7 billion in profit. It was one of the greatest corporate turnarounds in history. But Ghosn stayed too long. And the way he stayed, centralizing every decision through himself, building loyalty structures that undermined independent management, meant that when he was arrested at Tokyo Airport in 2018 on charges of financial misconduct, Nissan didn't just lose a CEO. They lost their entire decision-making nervous system. Every major call for the previous decade had run through one man. And now that man was gone. What came after wasn't a recovery. It was 7 years of leadership musical chairs, strategy reversals, and a company that had forgotten how to make bold decisions without someone telling them to. Here's where it gets concrete. In fiscal year 2019, the year after going to rest, Nissan posted a net loss of $6.2 billion. Their operating profit margin had fallen to 0.4%. For context, Toyota's was 8.2% that same year. They restructured. They cut models. They promised discipline. And for a brief window, 2021, 2022, it looked like it was working. Post-COVID demand propped up prices industry-wide, and Nissan rode that wave like every other automaker. But when the wave broke, the underlying rot became impossible to hide. By late 2023, Nissan's inventory had ballooned to over 100 days of supply in North America, meaning they had more cars sitting on lots than they could sell in 3 months. They were offering $4,000 to $7,000 in incentives per vehicle to move metal. That's not a sales strategy. That's desperation. And their cash reserves, which had looked stable at around $12 billion in 2022, had started declining in a way that, if the trend continued, would put them in a dangerous position by mid to late 2025. Which brings us to where we are right now. If there's one number that explains Nissan's crisis better than any other, it's this. In 2019, Nissan sold 1.5 million vehicles in China. By 2023, that number had fallen to roughly 793,000, nearly a 50% drop in 4 years. China used to be Nissan's insurance policy. When North America slowed, China absorbed the hit. When margins got squeezed, China volume kept the factories running. That insurance policy no longer exists. BYD, Geely, SAIC. Chinese domestic brands have captured the mass market with EVs and hybrids that are technologically competitive and priced at levels Japanese brands structurally cannot match. Nissan's Chinese joint venture partners are running their own EV lines now. The partnership that once gave Nissan massive scale in China is now a liability. Split attention, split investment, no unified direction. and Nissan has no credible EV product to fight back within that market. In December 2023, a story broke that should have been front-page news everywhere. Honda and Nissan were in merger talks. Think about what that actually means. These are two of Japan's most iconic automotive brands that have been competitors for 70 years, suddenly discussing whether to combine their entire operations. That doesn't happen because things are going well. That happens when at least one party has concluded, privately, that they cannot survive the next decade alone. The talks were framed publicly as a strategic partnership and an EV collaboration. But people inside both companies knew what this was really about. Nissan needed Honda's balance sheet. Honda needed Nissan's volume, and both needed the combined scale to compete with Toyota and the Chinese brands in the EV era. The merger talks eventually collapsed, reportedly because Honda's executives, upon closer inspection of Nissan's finances, couldn't agree on valuation. In other words, Honda looked under the hood and didn't like what they found. That single fact tells you more about Nissan's situation than any press release ever will. Nissan will tell you they invented the mass-market EV. And technically, they're right. The Nissan Leaf launched in 2010, years before Tesla had a mass-market product, years before any legacy automaker had taken EVs seriously. But being first doesn't mean being best. And in 2025, Nissan's EV lineup is, by any honest assessment, underwhelming. The Ariya, their flagship EV SUV, launched years late, had well-documented quality and software issues at launch, and has sold in numbers that are rounding errors compared to the Tesla Model Y or even the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Their solid-state battery technology, which they've been publicly developing since 2017, has been pushed back again and is now not expected to reach production until 2028 at the earliest. Meanwhile, BYD is releasing new models every 6 months. Toyota is scaling hybrid technology globally. Hyundai and Kia are posting record EV sales. And Nissan is essentially fighting the next war with last decade's weapons. The math is brutal. To build competitive EVs at scale requires capital. Nissan's capital position is deteriorating. You cannot borrow your way to an EV future when a market already doubts your credit story. Here is the detail that should make you stop and pay attention. In the summer of 2024, Nissan quietly restructured its executive compensation program. Long-term incentive packages, the stock options and multi-year bonuses that senior executives receive as a reason to stay and build for the future, were modified in a way that shifted more weight towards short-term cash payouts. When a company does that, it means one of two things. Either leadership is trying to retain talent that might otherwise leave for more stable companies, or leadership itself has concluded that the long-term picture is uncertain enough that locking executives into multi-year equity positions no longer makes sense. Neither interpretation is good. Both point to the same underlying reality. The people running Nissan are not operating with the confidence of a company that believes in its own 10-year plan. And the employees have noticed. Nissan's voluntary attrition rate in engineering and product development roles has climbed steadily since 2022. The people who build the cars are leaving. And in an industry where institutional knowledge is everything, that loss compounds every other problem. So why 12 months? Why is that the number? Because of three things converging simultaneously. First, Nissan's next major debt maturity cycle hits in late 2025 and into 2026. Refinancing that debt in the current rate environment with current credit ratings will cost significantly more than it did when the debt was originally issued. That's a direct cash drain with no operational offset. Second, their North American product lineup has a gap. The current Rogue and Sentra cycles are aging, and the next generation models are not ready to launch in time to defend market share against freshly updated competitors. There will be a 12 to 18-month window where Nissan is selling yesterday's product against everyone else's tomorrow. Third, the Japanese government and major institutional investors have made it quietly but clearly known that another restructuring without a credible path to profitability will trigger intervention. Either forced merger, asset sale, or something more drastic. All three of these land at roughly the same time, which is why people inside Nissan are not talking about 5-year plans right now. They're talking about surviving the next 4 quarters. There are 3 realistic paths from here, and only one of them ends with Nissan surviving as an independent brand. Scenario 1, the managed merger. Nissan finds a partner, Honda, Mitsubishi, or potentially a Chinese automaker with capital and distribution ambition, and negotiates a deal while they still have leverage. This is the best outcome. Nissan's brand, its North American dealer network, its manufacturing IP, these are real assets. A deal made now, from a position of partial strength, is worth far more than a deal made under duress in 18 months. Scenario 2, the slow sell-off. No merger, but continued asset sales, brand retirements, market exits. Nissan leaves China formally, sells the Mitsubishi stake, shrinks to a regional player in North America and Japan, keeps the lights on but ceases to matter globally. This is the Mitsubishi story of the early 2010s. Survival without significance. Scenario 3, the uncontrolled collapse. Debt pressures, product gaps, and talent flight intersect badly. Credit gets downgraded, suppliers start demanding faster payment terms or exit contracts, and the whole structure begins to come apart faster than management can respond. This is the least likely scenario. Governments and banks tend to intervene before a company this size reaches this point. But it's not impossible. Here's the real reason you should care about this, even if you've never considered buying a Nissan in your life. Nissan employs, directly and indirectly, over 130,000 people worldwide. It anchors manufacturing communities in Tennessee, Mississippi, Mexico, Japan, and the UK. Its supplier network touches hundreds of thousands more jobs. But more importantly, what's happening to Nissan is happening in slower motion to almost every legacy automaker that didn't move fast enough on EVs, that got too comfortable in China, and that let management instability eat away at their strategic core. Nissan is the canary. The question isn't just whether Nissan survives. The question is, which brand is next? In 1999, Carlos Ghosn walked into a dying company and turned it around in 2 years. What Nissan needs right now is that same combination of brutal honesty about the problem and decisive speed in solving it. What they have instead is a leadership team navigating by committee, a product gap that won't close in time, and a financial window that is measurably, provably closing. Their own executives know this. The CFO said it out loud in 2023. The Honda talks confirmed it in 2024. The numbers prove it every quarter. The only question that's left, the one nobody can answer yet, is whether the people in charge will act fast enough to matter. If they don't, we won't be making a video about Nissan losing everything. We'll be making a video about where Nissan used to be. If you found this useful, subscribe. We cover the stories that the business media buries until it's too late to do anything about them. See you in the next one.